Hey everybody, so today we're going to be watching the debate between Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz. Just a heads up, Ted Cruz obviously won this debate, and um, the first thing with Ted Cruz is that he's a very experienced debater and he has very formal training, so Bernie Sanders starts with a leg down. So, well, let's watch the video.
Dana, thank you. I want to thank CNN and Jake and Dana both for hosting this, everyone for coming out. And Bernie, thank you for joining us for a substantive debate on tax policy several months ago.
Oh, and they're debating Trump's healthcare, not
And I got to
healthcare, his tax plan.
say, this debate is very, very simple. Bernie and the Democrats want every one of you watching today to pay more taxes.
Cruz is really right on this one. The Democrats have been consistently wanting tax increases across the board, and he's going to explain why later, and it's going to be because the Democrats always say the rich don't pay enough taxes, but even if you tax the rich at 100% tax rate, is nowhere near the amount of wealth needed for their ideal form of welfare state. And where are they going to get this money? Obviously from the middle and lower classes. And the Democrat base is the middle class, so obviously they're going to want to tax the poor more. So it's a reverse Robin Hood trick on Bernie, not the Republicans.
And Republicans want to lower the taxes for each and every person watching this debate. Now, tonight I'm going to make a prediction. Bernie's going to suggest in just a few seconds that this is not really about you. This is about, quote, taxing the rich. That's what the Democrats always say.
He's absolutely right. And Bernie's going to say the exact thing that he predicted, that the wealthy need to pay more taxes. That's Bernie's whole entire stick. He has nothing more of substance.
But here's what you need to know. Every time Bernie says the rich, what he means is taxpayers. And so if you pay taxes, he's talking about you. Now, how do we know this? We know this because there's a difference between facts and rhetoric.
One thing Ted Cruz forgets to explain here is there's actually a very few number of, taxpayers in the United States. Already, a lot of people don't pay federal income tax, and there's very few people who actually pay taxes, so the burden falls primarily on those who actually earn income, and those are any, form of taxpayer. There's very few of them compared to, like, the rest of the population. So it's a small amount of people supporting the rest, and Bernie Sanders thinks that those people should support more, even they don't support enough.
Bernie's tax plan cost over $13 trillion.
Gonna skip over to Sanders' rebuttal to this.
Cruz is going to tell you that if we give tax breaks to the billionaires, like George W. Bush did, like Ronald Reagan, then we're going to create zillions of jobs and you're all going to become very, very rich. That we have a trickle-down economic theory. Tax breaks to the wealthy.
This is emotionally an emotional play by Bernie, as he lacks facts and logic in this case, because the primary driver of economic growth is I in the GDP calculation, and investment spending is what increases the amount of capital which was necessary in order to produce goods. So this is why Bernie Sanders is really wrong in this case. The wealthy do drive investment spending, so therefore if the wealthy have more money, they'll increase I. Carry on, Bernie.
For the largest corporations, and whoa, everything is good. That is a totally fraudulent theory. Here is the reality of American society today. For 40 years, the middle class of this country, the great middle class, has been shrinking. And what we have seen is a massive transfer of wealth from working families.
Okay, so this idea of wealth transfer from the middle class to the rich classes, I think, way overstated, because if you look at why the wealthy is growing so quickly, it is mostly to do with the bank bailouts, quantitative easing, in which the federal government transferred hundreds of billions of dollars, if not a couple $1 trillion, to the wealthy via direct bank transfers by essentially inflating bank numbers because they essentially, sell bonds at a lower price and then buy them back at a higher price. an easy way of inflating the um, the banks' assets, in which then the banks buy, invest in the billionaires' businesses, give them loans, in which they then you spend, generate more income. So it's really artificially the Fed artificially increase the money supply without causing inflation through quantitative easing. This is why they're getting wealthy, incredibly more wealthy relative to the poor and the middle class. And let's not forget, the middle and lower class have been getting richer in the United States. It hasn't been as stagnant as he says. It's just a slower rate of growth compared to the wealthy. And this is primarily due to quantitative easing.
To the top 1/10 of 1%. Trillions
Exactly.
of dollars.
Exactly. This is not going from the middle class to the rich class. It's going from the government to the rich. So this makes very little sense by Bernie, because why would you want to give the government more power, who are then directly benefit the rich via quantitative easing and via the Federal Reserve? Why would you want to give more power to the government? It makes no sense to me.
Of corporate greed and an unfair tax system. Now, the Trump Republican tax proposal that's before us today, this proposal is being pushed by Senator Cruz's campaign contributors, some of the wealthy.
Ted Cruz is later on gonna explain that this is not true. Like, the Koch brothers, the biggest Republican donor, and then the NRA too, but, everybody knows the Koch brothers. They're wealthy billionaires, they're petrochemical guys, and they're nowhere near as big as the big unions, the teacher unions, which are donating way more. Top five, definitely teachers unions, big unions. And this, they're going straight to the Democratic Party. And the reason this, and that's, I think, unethical. Why should a union be supporting political candidates? It makes no sense, because the members of the unions have their own political, you know, beliefs. They're not necessarily all Democrats, and there's some Republicans in teachers' unions. It makes no sense to me.
People in this country by the Koch brothers, who are worth $90 billion. Why are they pushing this agenda? Because 80% of the tax breaks in this proposal.
Well, only the wealthy pay taxes in our society. The middle class and low class pay very little in tax rates compared to the wealthy. It makes no sense to really lower the taxes when they're already having effective tax rates of zero, in some cases negative.
Will go to the top 1%. In fact, 30% of the middle class will end up paying more in taxes. 40% of the tax benefits will go to the top 1/10 of 1%. This is
Exactly, because the lower classes are almost at zero already. They don't need more. So this is why we need to have the upper middle class, and the wealthy get more tax rates than the poor.
massive tax breaks for the wealthy. And then the other thing they do, in order to pay for their tax breaks, you know what they do? They cut Medicaid over a 10-year period by $1 trillion, throwing 15 million Americans off of the health insurance they have. They cut Medicare by 470.
And then he paints the Republicans as cruel, uncaring people. You need to cut, because you need to cut spending, and you also need to cut taxes. I think you need to cut more spending than taxes. This is why Rand Paul voted against. But this whole entire debate's really good, and it shows how Ted Cruz consistently destroys Bernie Sanders on issue after issue. And Bernie Sanders doesn't really have the statistics or evidence to show this. He sees this. He uses emotional appeals, which why people like him. He taps into the very sentiment that Trump does, the anti establishment, but he is a complete lunatic about it. He advocates for socialism, which is the worst economic system on earth by far. I recommend checking out the full debate. The video would get really long if I sat here and did a full, play-by-play analysis of this all. But the tax reform advocated by Trump, I think, is really good. That it cuts taxes for all across the board, and Ted Cruz advocates for this right. Trump's tax plan is great, I think. However, it needs to cut more spending. We can't, because if you decrease revenue and increase taxes, decrease revenue and increase spending, or have spending the same, you're gonna result in really large deficit spending, which is going to lead to higher national debt, which speeds up the collapse of the U.S. economy via debt bubble or asset seizure, which may become necessary in the future. Um, this is just what I think may happen with the national debt. I should do another video explaining this all. So I would like to thank everybody for listening today. Please comment, like, and subscribe down below. This is a great video. I recommend it. Ted Cruz does a great job of defending Trump's tax plan. Have a great day.